Hello, this is Mrs. Collins, and today we're going to talk about weaving with paper. It's a way to embellish and enhance photographs in a unique and interesting way. Our learning targets for this particular project are that you demonstrate the use of various forms and types of photography to prepare photographs for a physical display for people to see and enjoy, to showcase your skills with your camera, editing, file handling, and using some photography trends. And finally, to showcase your craftsmanship. You can see on the side here, this is a detailed image of a paper weaving that I did. And I'm going to show you how to do this project. And I learned some things along the way. I had a lot of fun making it. It just took some time, some patience, and there's lots and lots of fun ideas that you can do with this project. With this one, I actually learned many lessons, and I did this one first and then did the car weaving next. This particular image, I decided to weave together glossy photo paper and matte metallic gold paper. This is a detail view, so you can see how the paper weaves over, and under, and then I decided to do kind of a dispersion look on the edges. So I left my photo papers loose and unglued together so I could manipulate the pieces while I worked on it. So this was kind of tricky. And why this project was so challenging was it's actually kind of small. I started out with a photograph that was a 5x7 or a 4x6. So as I was making it, I decided that the project would be much less difficult if the images were printed larger, which made the paper easier to hold on to and to work with. So if you want a challenge, make your paper weaving small. So what I learned on the next one is I actually used images that were the size of a US letter piece of paper. I also had a lot of fun kind of thinking about the edges of this image and how to make it disperse and change and move. I ended up putting tape on the back of this paper weaving to kind of keep it held together. Then I glued it down on a piece of cardstock and added the tiny little squares and rectangles around it. And then I finally matted it to display. I really enjoyed making this one. But let's get into the details of how to do a traditional paper weaving project. Take a new photograph that you would like to use. I suggest using a digital camera or your phone. Save the file where you can find it and organize it. Open it in Photoshop or another photo editing software and manipulate it or change it in some way. I decided to use several different filters. I decided to end up using the graphic pen filter and use one image that was in black and white or grayscale and another image that was in color. I edited both of them, saved them on my computer, and then printed them out. The key to printing them is to make it the same size of paper. So these are the materials that I used: my paper, photos, a pen, a pencil, a ruler, an exacto knife, and a cutting mat to get started. So phase 2, making the lines. I'm going to suggest that you make the lines on the back of your photographs with a pencil. I strategically used an ink pen so that my images and lines would show up better on screen for people to see. So what you can't see very well is I actually marked them with pencil first and then came across and used the ink pen just so they were easier to view. As you can see, I used a cutting mat behind my image that had a grid on it. This helped me add my lines on my picture very fast. But if you do not have access to a grid lined cutting mat, then you'll have to do the hand measuring the old fashioned way. I decided to use half-inch spaced lines. You can actually make your strips of paper any size, shape, or design you choose. You'll see here in a bit. The number of spaces on your image is important. I suggest after you get done marking them that you number them or code them with letters to make it easier to put your photo back together. Because what you're actually doing is creating yourself a large puzzle. So phase 3. After you've made the lines and you've used your ruler to add the lines on the photograph, it's time to start cutting. When you convert over and start cutting, I feel like it's important to use a metal ruler if you're going to be using an exacto knife. Keep your fingers out of the way, and if you need help using the exacto knife, please let me know. It's also important to cut on a mat or a piece of cardboard to protect the table that you're working on. The next phase is cutting. I started using an exacto knife and a metal ruler, and I decided that my lines were far enough apart that I could also use a pair of scissors. So for part of the time on my project, I used the exacto knife, and then I converted over to using a very sharp pair of scissors. If you work with a smaller piece of paper, the scissors might not work quite so well. So cut apart each photo on the lines that you created. I think it's important that you keep track of each part of the photo and keep them in separate piles. Keep them sorted. This will make putting together the photos a bit less confusing. The next phase is getting organized. So after cutting the pieces apart, I organized the strips in piles and I tried to put my pictures back together. I kind of pre-laid them out on the table and then I decided where to start next. So we're finally at the part for weaving. There's actually many ways you can do this, and there's no right or wrong way. You want to just do what works best for you. I wanted to keep my picture loose, so I had the freedom to move the strips around. Some of the other tutorials I watched, teachers had students tape down or glue together pieces of the edges of their photos to help them put them together. I did not do that. I kept all the strips of my paper loose so I had more control to move them and slide them together. So select one piece to start. I started with a middle piece of my photo to help me get things aligned. And then you start weaving over, under, and continue doing this till you get through all the strips of paper. It's difficult at first. Try to keep the image aligned. Then when you're ready, grab a second strip of paper and start weaving it through in the opposite direction. So here's an updated image of now I have two pieces of paper, or strips of paper woven through on my Camaro here. And the second one, I just kind of worked through in an opposite way, and I'm getting ready to slide them next to each other and kind of move them together. So here's another version where I now have 3 or 4 of the papers together. So as you can see, I left the papers unglued and untaped so that they could bend up and move down easily and I can move them around. So this can be challenging, but it also can make it easier. It's up to you if you want to use tape or glue as you go. So as you can see, I had a few gaps in my weaving process, and so it was important that I took the time to kind of really push those together and have a nice tight weave of the paper. So I just keep going one piece of paper at a time, over, under, opposite from each other. all the way till the edge of the image. So I'm going to kind of just click through here and let you see what it looks like. And the edge pieces kind of look like they're frayed. You can decide how to handle that when you get to the end, but you keep adding them over, under, kind of like a checkerboard. I really like the idea of blending together a colored photo with a black and white photo. I also had fun with the different styles. There's lots of different directions you can go with this. But anyway, after I finished my weaving, I did go ahead and glue it down to a mat board and framed it. So I really liked how it turned out. So this was the first weaving that I did. After completing this, I decided to go do some additional research, and there are tons of ideas out there, some really fun ones too. So I want you to be creative and not feel like you have to do the checkerboard pattern motif that I did. There are lots and lots of ideas, and you can continue to do your own research. There's ideas where artists combine photographs with other types of paper or other types of materials such as fabric, ribbon. Some weaving patterns are consistent and others aren't. There are different types of shapes that you can weave together, different directions, and you can even leave gaps in your weaving too and let the background colored paper show through. These are all source images that I found online. Anyway, you will be able to see this presentation in our online classroom, and you can look at it in detail on your own time. If you need to stop this and rewind it or need further instructions, just let me know. In our online classroom, there's some other tutorials as well and additional ideas. I am here to help you, and if there's anything I can do, please let me know. I can't wait to see what you create, and thanks for watching.